at the time, and academia even today, they think President Clinton was impeached because he had an affair with this girl. Nothing could be further from the truth.
Right.
If the House of Representatives, including 5 Democrats, by the way, who voted to impeach a president of their own party, had not impeached him and set a precedent that felony perjury and felony obstruction of justice were not impeachable offenses, we would have set a precedent for every future president that they could commit those crimes and not face impeachment.
And finally, Judge, I mean, with the thought of the Clintons being back in the White House, how does that make you feel?
Well, first, I'm only here as a former congressman today. I'm not appearing in my capacity as a judge. And second, since you mentioned it, because I am a judge, I can't weigh in on political events, but I'm sure that the American people take everything into consideration when they look at their candidates and they pick the person that they think is best qualified. How's that for a political answer?
You know what? It was great, and I didn't expect a real answer from you anyway, Judge.
Well, I didn't want to have just dead air time here with you, Judge Janine.
Judge, thank you very much for being with us and sharing what was a very important place in American history.
Thank you. It was an honor to be with you.
And coming up, I go one-on-one with the one and only Ann Coulter on the Lewinsky interview. You're not going to want to miss the fireworks. Why do you think she chose now to bury the dress and burn the beret?
Well, I suspect Vanity Fair has something to do with it, and Vanity Fair would never publish anything that is harmful to a Democrat. So, yeah, to get it out there. I give a lot of college speeches, and kids at the speeches were 1 year old when Monica and Clinton, the scandal
college
broke.
Kids were 1 year old.
A lot of people don't. One of my friends is a doctor. He told me one of his young patients did not believe him when he told her that President Clinton got oral sex from an intern in the Oval Office. She said, "You're lying. You're making that up." And he said, "Google it."
Okay.
You're in for a surprise.
Vanity Fair does it at this time to benefit Hillary or the Democrats in 2016.
Get it out there. And you know, one thing I would add to what the great James Rogan said in your fabulous former segment, it's not just that President Clinton obstructed justice and committed perjury. I mean, obviously that was the main thing, but it's not just that 5 Democrats voted that way. The entire Supreme Court, including the justices who were appointed by Bill Clinton, boycotted his next State of the Union address. And there's a reason for that. We can't have a legal system if you can just obstruct justice and ask people to perjure themselves, which is what the president was doing. I noticed during that time, I was very involved. I wrote the book High Crimes and Misdemeanors, arguing for his impeachment. And I noticed during that time, whatever their politics were, lawyers were, I mean, unless they wanted to be on TV and would go on and defend him. That was like being, you know, an OJ lawyer defending Bill Clinton. Lawyers across the board were just beside themselves with anger at what Clinton had done, even if they voted for him and supported his policies, because you can't obstruct justice. And to act like Hillary is a victim of this. No, she was a co-conspirator. This is where I want to go.
I want to go with the personal piece. All right, so what you've got is Monica Lewinsky, 21 years old at the time she had this affair with the president, and it wasn't just one time. He was buying her gifts. I mean, there's a whole thing going on.
Obstructing the gifts.
One of the things, she says that feminists failed her. Didn't they?
I think it's a little stronger than that. Feminists went after her, targeted her, because, as Nina Burley wrote in, I think it was the New Yorker, I'd give Bill Clinton a oral sex myself, using a slang term, for keeping abortion legal. That was the position of the feminist movement. Gloria Steinem, you'll remember, said, well, he groped her once, and or this was for Kathleen Willey, and that he took no for an answer. So Gloria Steinem is introducing the one free grope rule, these hysterics over sexual harassment.
But it's almost as though sexual harassment is okay. And make no mistake, I don't care if she agreed or didn't agree. She's 21. She's an intern, a college intern.
Oh, yeah.
He's the president of the United States. If that isn't sexual harassment, you know, whether she thinks that she agreed to it or not. I mean, and then, you know, they talk about a war on women.
Right.
And this is an area where you've got a young girl who is impressionable and whose life has been destroyed. Should it have been?
Yes, it would. I mean, it was horrible what happened to her, and I do feel sorry for her, and particularly what she writes about. She was young and stupid and vulnerable, and for her to come out and say, as if it's an excuse for him, this was absolutely consensual. We knew it was consensual.
Yeah.
You're young, he's the president, and by the way, that whole story, well, technically the Paula Jones story, where he as governor calls this young aide up, drops his pants, and says, kiss it, it pulled a thread, and could we leap ahead to Juanita Broaddrick? I mean, ABC and NBC News concluded after years-long investigation that Bill Clinton raped Juanita Broaddrick.
Okay, so we got to go, but very quickly, does this benefit or hurt Hillary Clinton?
I think it does not help her. I think the media thinks it helps her because they seem to think that, oh, she's a victim, we must elect her president. Well, I don't think most of America thinks that.
That doesn't follow. That doesn't follow. Anyway, Ann Coulter, always good to have you on the show. Anyway, coming up, the latest on the danger to the U.S. power grid. Will Washington ever do what's needed to protect us? And it's your last chance to vote in tonight's Insta poll. What lesson do you wish politicians' mothers had taught them? Facebook or tweet me at Judge Janine. We're going to read your answers next.
Hey, what you doing today? I'm riding down.
Still no action from lawmakers to actually try to protect us from this real and increasing threat. So what is it going to take to get something done? With me, former Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Nuclear Forces in the Reagan administration and President of the Center for Security Policy, Frank Gaffney. Good evening, Frank. You want to tell me what these people in Washington do all day?
Well, they do a lot of things. I think you're right to call attention to the hearing that took place this week, because when they were doing that, it was in stark contrast to the one you attended last month in the Senate, in the sense that you had a serious group of both legislators and witnesses talking about a serious problem, specifically the vulnerability of the grid, which it was made clear is very real, that it could be catastrophic for the country if, God forbid, either enemies of this country take advantage of that vulnerability or a solar storm causes it to be seriously disrupted, if not actually destroyed. That was in contrast to what they did over in the Senate side. And you asked, what are they doing over there? As you know, you saw it yourself, the subject was supposed to be keeping the lights on. Are we doing enough? And instead, the focus seemed to be keeping us in the dark.
Well, yeah,
very refreshing change in this House.
And it was embarrassing. I mean, Senator Landrieu, you know, in the Senate conducts this hearing, basically saying, how did the public find out about this? And yet, on the opposite side, in the House, is we've got Mike McCall from Homeland Security, who not only attended the hearing himself, but is letting the bill, the SIPA bill, out of committee, which will help us hopefully going forward.
This is really important because this was a subcommittee hearing of the Homeland Security Committee, as you say. The chairman of the full committee doesn't generally attend these subcommittee hearings. Mike McCall made a point of coming to this one both to make a personal statement about the fact that he thinks this is important, and then he actually made a statement to the effect that he thinks this could make all of the other kinds of problems that we're worrying about pale by comparison, because as you understand and as you've done so much to help illuminate, this is a nation-threatening danger. And I think he was there in part, and he was attesting to the importance of this legislation that would make the electromagnetic pulse threat, specifically EMP, a planning scenario for the Department of Homeland Security. Imagine, it isn't today. That's an important piece of legislation, and he's behind getting it, as you say, out of committee. And I think Pete Sessions, the chairman of the Rules Committee, is co-sponsor. He will, I think, make sure that it gets to and through the floor. And then maybe we can actually start getting something done about this grid vulnerability.
And you know, the shame of this thing is that, you know, there are so many other countries who have a strengthened grid, and we, you know, supposedly the most powerful powerful country in the world don't. But, you know, when you talk about people like Fred Sessions and you've got Waxman and Markey and Trent Franks, Pete Sessions, I should say, then you have to look at someone like Fred Upton, who's chair of the House Energy Committee, who gets most of his contribution from energy companies and lobbyists, a one-time Grid supporter who is preventing bills from coming up for a vote. I mean, what can the public do in a scenario like this?
Well, I think what they first of all need to do is precisely what you're doing, is getting smart about it. We have a website I would commend to them, securethegrid.org. It's a one-stop shop on the kind of problems we're talking about. Fred Upton, you're right, has been in the past a supporter of some of this legislation. At this point, he has not allowed it out of committee. Not this Critical Infrastructure Protection Act, but something called the SHIELD Act now. We need his help in getting this also enacted, because at the moment what's really missing, Judge, is the engagement of the electric utilities, who you'd think have got as much at stake as anybody in this thing, to fix the vulnerabilities of their infrastructure and thereby ensure that all of the other critical infrastructures work as well.
All right, Frank Gaffney, always good to have